Welcome back to my YouTube channel on my podcast. This is Kathie's coaching podcast. And today I have a special guest. It is Steph Speaks Love. It's my friend Steph. She's from Essex in the UK. And today we're going to talk about boundaries in the workplace, boundaries at home. And Steph has a lot of great content on this and advice on this and coaching on this. So I want to let her introduce herself to you and let's get right to it. Steph, please introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Kathie. Lovely to see you again. My recent program will focus around boundaries because everything I do, really, I suppose, has come back from a self-worth and values, self-worth and heart-centered kind of incarnation. That key aspects of what I do goes back to that. So I've got a degree in psychology. I ended up doing healing as well. So I've been kind of supporting unofficially ever since I was a teenager, just like always a person. If you need something, phone Steph. It really, I think, like a lot of people, started to gather momentum during lockdown. So I started holding space groups and having morning sessions where people could come and meditate. And then from there, it just spiraled and I started offering one-to-one sessions, group sessions. And yes, so everything from there, from self-love to relationships at work, family, dating, anything like that. So it's kind of like all heart-based and self-worth.
Wow, I love that. And so if you know, her name is Steph Speaks Love. So that just encompasses so many positive, helpful things that are very concrete that I really want to touch on. And we're going to talk about boundaries. And you think about it, boundaries in the workplace is something that sometimes we do really great at and sometimes not so great, but we want to reward ourselves on those great things. So, Steph, let's start with talking about like what's a boundary? How can we establish that in the workplace without coming off as rude? And something tells me you're going to be the best person to ask this question to, because if Steph speaks love, she's going to tell us how to set a boundary with love.
Absolutely. So I think as well with the name, a lot of people might just sort of assume love and anything love and loving is all very fluffy and, there's never any pushback, but actually love, we've heard of tough love. Love is actually protecting yourself and those around you and being responsible. So actually we might have to have a serious conversation or speak a truth that might make somebody uncomfortable, but it can still come from a place of love and with an energy of love, and how the other person receives it. As long as you're doing your best with delivering it, you can't do any more than that. So yes, love is very powerful and not just fluffy. So when it comes to boundaries, these are like the invisible lines that we have around ourselves, and they help protect us, they help ground us, and they also shape our identity. With the boundaries, we've got three main types. So you can have enmeshed, which is at one end where they're too loose, too soft, and you're kind of very much at the whims of everyone else. You definitely can lose your own sense of identity. And this does even happen in the workplace and friendships. This isn't just with romantic relationships, which I used to believe, that enmeshment could just be like within the family, a parent, a lover. But this goes on everywhere in every dynamic. It can be the overgiving, constantly compromising, oversharing. And at the other end, you can have your rigid boundaries where quite closed off, not very trusting. So again, meshed as well, you can be incredibly trusting or just have it not even be cross your mind whether you should or shouldn't trust someone, just always going with it. But with the rigid boundaries, there again, this comes from deep self-preservation, a lot of trust issues as well with rigid boundaries. You could be somebody who's typically hyper independent, doesn't like to ask for help or can't ask for help, maybe even dominant, always want to take charge or micromanage. And then we have in the center balanced boundaries, which I like to call bamboo boundaries. And so these, you may have heard of like healthy boundaries, anything in that area, healthy, balanced, bamboo. This is where you've got a really firm, solid idea of who you are. You know who you are and what's right and what doesn't. You can also feel your intuition, like you're connected to yourself. So you've got your gut feelings. You can hear and feel what's right and what's wrong within yourself, which again connects back to your values. So it's a really key piece that maybe we can touch on at some point, but how your values, if you don't even stop to know what is important to you, then, your sense of self is lost. And again, it makes it very difficult to move confidently in the world or without being exploited, which sounds like a dramatic word, but it does happen. So when you've got your balanced boundaries and you know who you are, balanced boundaries are flexible. So you might be able or choose to consciously compromise or go, do you know what? I'm actually going to do that. It might not be ideal, but I can do that. But it's a conscious decision. You're not just at the whims of somebody else's demands. So then bamboo as well has very deep roots. And with that, so we're very grounded and we can bend a little without snapping. But whenever we choose to compromise or do something that might not be ideal, it's never going to feel like we're going against what we believe is right for the greater good. So that is kind of where the basics, the foundation of boundaries are.
Wow, wow. You just got my head spinning and turning. And I think of certain situations that I see happen in corporate where this can really come in helpful. So you have a leader who is in the far range. They're too rigid, they're too strict. And then you have the one who doesn't have any boundaries. But from what I'm hearing from you, it would be better to be centered and practice learning. The rigid needs to learn to be centered, and the other one who has no boundaries needs to learn to be the center. And I heard you mention bamboo, and I really want to like get that analogy clear in our minds. I may even put some B-roll of bamboo of actually if you start to study bamboo, and I want Steph to kind of explain to us how that picturing that bamboo can help us build those centered boundaries, especially when we have a leader over here who's treating us really bad and we're like, we don't know how to handle that. But we can handle that with boundaries and we can protect ourselves, like you said at the very beginning, with self love. And it's a protection thing. So let's talk about that bamboo. You've really sparked my interest on that.
Okay, with bamboo, it is beautiful. Well, I hope most people think that it's beautiful and protective, and boundaries should be there to help create an environment and self, which is very nourishing, nurturing, protective. And when all your boundaries are together, they can create that kind of canopy that lots of bamboo create. So it's shelter, grounding, and they're flexible and they're strong. And the main thing is bamboo is incredibly durable. So you could look at bamboo and think, oh, it just looks like these, lovely branches or stems, but actually they're super strong, super flexible. So you can always come back to yourself. So when you have healthy and balanced boundaries, you have a resilience, so that you have the confidence and resilience to maybe stand up to a boss. Sometimes we need to do it in the moment. Bamboo can be reactive or it can be proactive, or, sometimes you may want to pause and go, actually, I may need to impose, because sometimes it might feel a little bit more confrontational. When you're implementing a boundary, you might need to think, do you know what? I'm going to have to come away, let the situation calm down and do it later, but not to the point where you then chicken out and go, actually, I'm just going to let it go and then days go by. And then there are other times though when it's actually, no, I need to do this now. I think possibly most of us have been in situations where, say you're in a meeting and you may feel that the boss or somebody more senior or whoever is running that meeting may speak to you in a way which may feel disrespectful, embarrassing, and you might just want to sink your chair and wilt away. And there are ways, to push back on that. Now, part of the guide that I've written on boundaries has a section on, especially if you're dealing with a boss, you might want to do it in a slightly more creative or clever way, and asking a question rather than going, "You can't speak to me like that. You think you are," and then it escalated in a room and everyone's been getting the popcorn out. What we can do is ask a question, like, "Oh, was there something that I said, that was really unaligned with where you're going? Or I'm just wondering, it felt like there was some pushback there, like, because I felt a little bit of, uncomfortability just when you said that there to me." Bring it back to feelings or ask a question. Why did you respond that way? Is everything okay? Sometimes, you have to, again, this is when the more you practice, so you have to always be kind with yourself when you're practicing, and that it is, just about learning, and you will get better at it. But yes, sometimes I do feel that if you've always been that person who's been very timid, very soft with your boundaries, don't like to stand up for yourself, then typically there does tend to be a pattern where you might be that person. If you're not a yes person and you're timid, then you may get trampled on a lot, unfortunately. Yes people, believe it or not, don't often get those over reactions from senior people because they're quite needy. So they're like, "Oh, well, they're okay." But if you do find you're one of those people who's got a few incidents where it's like, "Oh my gosh, it's happened again. I've lost my voice. I haven't been able to speak up for myself." Definitely. I love what you said, like, lean into it while you're learning. For someone like me who used to be very giving, very overgiving, I ended up I literally did end up becoming too rigid in my boundaries and pushing people away as a result. People go, "What are you doing?" And then it's fine tuning and balancing and bringing it back. If you have a situation with a boss and it's not in a group setting, but you just find the dynamic is really off, you're being micromanaged, you feel like you can't breathe, then have a think. Am I going to be able to handle that conversation verbally in a one-to-one? Am I going to have a direct conversation, or am I going to do it indirectly by saying, "Oh, actually, I have this, this, and this on." With your experience, maybe try and flatter them with it, like, "What do you think? I just would like to know how you would manage this, because, I'm really conscious that, obviously this is super important. I really want to give this the best I can. How would you prioritize these?" Da, da, da. So there's different ways of doing that, but it could be micromanaged and it's to the point where it's not just you feeling overloaded. Do you want to do it in an email? Do you want to do it verbally? Where are your comfort levels? Do you feel like you might crumble or crack? And the other thing is, practice having these conversations in the mirror to a cushion. It might sound ridiculous, but when you say it aloud and you prepare yourself for whatever response, prepare yourself for a good response, prepare yourself for being fobbed off, prepare yourself, how are you going to respond or react? So there is a lot when it's a direct boundary where you want to challenge something, practice and rehearsing really will do it.
Yes, for sure. So I like how she said, always be kind to yourself, be fine tuning and practicing. We talked about this a couple of episodes ago about practicing, practicing, practicing. It's just part of life. You're gonna slowly but surely get better at things and practice. And I also like how she said to flatter them, because once you flatter them, especially the rigid micromanager, they're gonna feel, oh, okay, I feel seen because that's what they want. You don't want to flatter them over extremely. But here's where that flattery can come in. So she mentioned the balance where you're trying to understand where is this going. You want to be kind to yourself and you want to get in touch with your intuition. So your intuition will guide you as to whether you do even need to flatter them. Even your intuition, once you start really listening to it, it'll guide you on, do you need to send an email? Do you need to send this? And then let's say you decide to send an email and it backfires on you, something doesn't go the way you want. Just chalk it up to practice. You understand. And some of my listeners have been working for the same boss for a long time. And this boss has been mean to them, mean to them. So they understand what the next move is going to be. I like how she said to practice sounding it out loud because you already know if you've been working for the same boss for a long time and you already know their patterns, you already know how to sound it out and you can practice that at home. Like she said, talking to the cushion, but let's practice talking to the cushion, practice talking in the mirror, practice talking while you're driving your car if you're all by yourself. And that's all part of practice. And really and truly, that's what we're always doing is practicing. So, Steph, you mentioned a guide that you have. How can we get that? And what does that guide kind of teach us?
Oh my gosh. So the guide will cover professional boundaries, dating boundaries, close relationships, neurodivergent considerations. Uh, and you can get that just by either Instagram at Steph Speaks Love. I'm on LinkedIn, same there, Steph Speaks Love. I'm on the other platforms as well, but I mainly use Instagram and LinkedIn. And with that, we've got the art of saying no, the art of asking, and just a guide of like what to expect, when you go on this journey of trying to fine tune your boundaries and become bamboo like, it'll let you know what's in store a little bit, including things like you may lose certain friendships. I know that might be at the extreme end, but it does happen. You may experience a little bit of pushback. You'll find out those who are really supportive. Like when you start implementing a boundary, you'll know those who didn't mean to do it intentionally or who are, people who want to take advantage because they'll be apologetic and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. You'll get those people who will absolutely be like, oh gosh, it would be the worst thing. They would hate to think they were doing that. You'll get other people who get so offended. They're typically the ones who needed them the most. But it'll talk you all through that in the guide. And there was something I just wanted to touch on and that you mentioned when talking about workplace. It isn't just with bosses in the workplace. Unfortunately, and it's been a few years since I've been in the corporate or public sector. So I used to, I did many years working there, especially as a personal assistant. And when I started that part of my career, which was many years ago, about 25 years ago, things were definitely more toxic then. So yes, it still exists, but I am thankful that the environment is way less toxic now. I mean, typically the boss dynamic is the least of the worries. Sometimes it's just with your co-workers. And if you get somebody who wants to push their luck, X, Y, and Z. So, and it can be more daunting with maybe a popular teammate or something like that. Oversharing in the workplace, not knowing the boundary around letting your personal life spill over into the work environment, not just with somebody who you're close with. All of these things can be very disruptive to your own day, performance, productivity, and that of your team. And I don't know if you wanted me to touch on any other points before we move on, or is it okay, going through this?
Yes, go ahead. This is very helpful, especially like with other teammates. So maybe touch more on that as well and just boundaries in general. And if you want to bring up family boundaries too, we could talk about that. We have probably about 10 more minutes to go. So go ahead.
Okay. So Yes, I'm just going to throw some things out there really quick, just in case they land with somebody who's listening, and then they can go and find the resource. Be Like Bamboo, it is free to download. So yes, oversharing in the workplace, groups who are too cliquey in the workplace, all of this can have a negative impact on performance. And the oversharing thing, especially, I do have ADHD. Didn't realize until about 9 years ago. Many of the challenges for me were the emotional side of things, the not being able to regulate. So if I became flustered at work, everybody knew, and that would kind of dominate, especially if you're in a small team. So that would dominate. But again, so self boundaries is another one. I now have self boundaries, and that's another big thing. And they're the promises that we keep to ourselves. How am I going to show up for myself today? And how can I trust myself? So these are all different areas where, you put a line in place for yourself or for somebody else, and we honor it. And with families as well. Boundaries with families are super great, especially if your family members are all open, or you're all on your own journey of healing, or you're aware that some of the dynamics, need improving. If you're all on that page or pretty chill, then, implementing things that may have felt normal for so many years. It's not until you become an adult or start interacting in the workplace, you're like, I can't believe this has been going on. So then, you can start to create that distance, because enmeshment and enmesh boundaries with family members. And I'm certain also with females and mother and daughter or sisters, things like that. So there, you know, creating that space and finding your own identity again, and actually saying, oh, I don't like that, or I would prefer it if you didn't do that. Or, especially if somebody's gate crashing your home all the time, or, you have a mother-in-law who's always passing comment or always trying to be helpful, keeps dropping things off to your house that you don't need. And you have to then spend your time clearing it away, or you then have to repurpose or give it. So there's lots of areas. It's jam-packed, the guide. So yes, head to Steph Speaks Love on Instagram or LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find a link to download it.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think it's important to mention here that I include a blog post on every video I do. It will be in the links in the description or the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. And inside that blog post, I include uh, the transcript for today's video. I also have bonus resources like where to find Steph, and also where you can start working with her. Get these resources, because I can tell you right now, I can already think of a couple of people who are just that I've been coaching and working with that really could use these resources, and myself included, because honestly, boundaries are something that you're always working on. It's kind of like it's just a journey. It's not a destination. You don't just get here and go, oh, I got all my boundaries all drawn out. No, we're always working on it. It's more like just practice, 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 practice. And I talk about that a lot on my channel, about practicing the skills that you learn. And I invite you to go, at the very least, follow her on Instagram, because she's got a ton of great things that she puts on her Instagram. That's how I found her. I now follow her on LinkedIn as well, and that's how we connected. So, Steph, is there anything else you want to share with us before we go?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple of main points. So with boundaries as well, apart from reclaiming your identity, knowing your values and knowing that it's okay that they can change over time, because we're not rigid. We evolve, we grow. So our boundaries will need to do that with us. And the thing is, it is the biggest indicator of self-love and self-worth. So if you're not doing it for yourself, you cannot just expect others to know and do for you and show you that love and respect back and show you your worth back if you're not knowing it yourself. And about your boundaries will also help you get towards any goals that you have. So it's not just your own, inner development and, protecting yourself. It's like, how can I show up in the world? How can I grow? And your dreams, once you've got your boundaries in place and there's less chaos going on around you and you're less at the mercy of the whims of others, you start having more perspective and clarity on where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So it's great at protecting time, preventing burnout. Once your boundaries are in place, you're going to be exhausted less, you're going to reclaim more time. So it really is like boundaries and self-worth are just, I feel, deep foundation, as well as food, because I'm big on diet. I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutrition, but I know that sleep, food, and boundaries are like what keep me able to get the best out of everything. Yes, I just think we do need to be working on them, and they're definitely something that grow and change. Like boundaries?
Yes. Oh, it okay, this is a perfect ending to this episode because this is gonna leave us curious for more, and here's what I'm talking about. I'm gonna have Steph back on the podcast again in the near future because this has just been full of gold nuggets that I know my audience is gonna love. Let me give you a little sneak peek of what we might talk about next time. And we talk about this on my channel too. As Steph said, boundaries, food, and sleep. Those three things are her main components. And the boundaries are the foundation, as she said. So the roots of that bamboo go really, really deep. On the next episode that we talk about, we're going to talk about those roots and how they can keep you firm in your way and keep you in that balance because the roots, if you think about it, if they go really deep, your tree is not just going to blow over the next storm that comes through. So that's what we're going to talk about next time if I can get Steph to come back with and visit with us. So before we go, I will let Steph tell you goodbye and tell you where you could. She's already told us where you could find her, but please tell us again, just in case somebody missed it.
Okay, so Instagram at Steph Speaks Love, LinkedIn at Steph Speaks Love. I am on YouTube, but I haven't really posted there yet, but I have got a couple of shows ready. So actually, yes, follow me on YouTube because I will be uploading on there very soon.
Okay, good deal. So,
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real
uh,
pleasure.
thank you, and let me tell you something, Steph. I can guarantee you that you've helped somebody like put little pieces of their puzzle together, and that it just lights me up like a firecracker because I love being able to do that to help others. If I help just one person, and I know you probably feel the same way, I'm blessed. I am so blessed, and I'm so happy
It,
to.
like, it makes me like so ecstatic. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Like, so yes, I
I
love
am.
it with that. It made a
I
difference.
know. I am. Me too. I'm very grateful to have you today, and we look forward to working with you again soon. And again, links will be in the show notes and description below. That's the episode for today. I trust that you found it helpful. And if you know somebody who can benefit from this, please share it with them. And until next time, I will see you next time. Peace out and namaste.